What is this cowboy doing? We can make a quick stop. Hey,
Hey, looking for some work.
what's a 5090?
Oh yeah, 5090. Well, that's just a high-end graphics card for a computer.
Okay, is that the things that catch fire?
Oh, you have heard of it? Yeah, they have caught fire before.
You might want to go down to the fire station and learn how to be a firefighter.
That's actually a good idea. I think I will make that trip down there. How about you? You got any work for me?
I'm sure I could come up with something.
Okay. Welcome back to the channel. In this episode of the 50 series showdown, we're going to add the 5090 to the productivity testing of Puget Bench benchmarks and some actual video rendering times and see where it stacks up. So the goal, again, don't waste your money. Everybody wants the 5090. Do you really need it? Do you see the benefit of it? We've seen the synthetic benchmarks. Let's look at some real world performance and find the card that really works well for us. Now, this is going to be just a 30,000 foot view because there's a lot of data that I have been collecting and I want to bring to you. This is just the first part of this productivity benchmark. The systems that are used are the same three systems: the Intel Bench, that is the i9-14900KF, the Gigabyte board, 32 gig of 6,000 megahertz transfer memory, 1,000 watt power supply. The AMD bench is a 9900X with a Tai Chi Lite, 32 gig, 6,000 megahertz, similar setup, and similar wattage power supply. And we do have a Optimus contact frame and Optimus signature blocks on both of these test benches. And then the office rig is sort of, everyone knows this is sort of the overblown. I overbuilt this one with the KS and the 96 gig of memory, 6800 transfer, 1200 watt, redundant pumps. I did a direct die with a direct die cooler from Thermal Grizzly, the Direct Die Pro V1. And these three systems are going to be the ones we're going to use and plug in our video cards, which is the 5070, 5070 Ti, 5080, and 5090 is in the mix. So let's take a look. So the guidelines for this is the same as they have been for the first few parts of this rendering series. Same systems, settings, try our best to control the variables, and use the same resolutions. What we're going to focus in today is the Puget Bench standard scores and looking at our manual render times, the quick render times within DaVinci Resolve. So this is going to be more representative of real-world benchmarking. There's nothing wrong with a synthetic benchmark. If it's done right, it can be just as reliable. And I'll be honest with you, looking at what Puget Bench can put out there versus how many hours I've spent rendering the same two 4K files, we're just sort of take a 30,000 foot view of the work that has been collected here. I've got over 200 hours of rendering. I've looked at 9 GPUs, 3 systems, 57 different setup combinations, 2 4K files, and 3 versions of DaVinci Resolve, 19, 20 beta, and then the final release 20.0 Studio, and 2 versions of the Puget Bench benchmark software, 1.1.1 and then 1.2.0 that supports the DaVinci Resolve 20. So 1.1.1 supported 19, and then they moved to, when they did the final release, is that 1.2.0 would support DaVinci Resolve Studio 20. So we want to know how these GPUs stack up. So again, the Puget Bench test for DaVinci Resolve There's basic and standard options. Today we're going to focus on the standard score, and those are for the studio users, the ones that have believed in that software, bought in, and you have unlocked the full potential of the capability and compatibility between the GPUs and the software. And then we're going to use the DaVinci Resolve Quick Export, and that is going to be an H.264 format. If you look at the previous videos when I talked about the codecs and the containers, we're going to focus very, very narrowly on this initial result video and looking at just the most common H.264 format, and we're going to look at the time that was needed to render these two files. Obviously, the shorter the time is better. So let's take a peek at these GPUs. Okay, first is the Puget benchmark for DaVinci Resolve. And this company has really been great to work with. I've had some conversation with them. They're approachable, and I highly recommend this particular product. It's been pretty reliable, and as you can see, repeatable across different cards, different setups, and it makes relatively believable numbers if you can follow the trends here. So with the 3 different systems, there's the Intel test bench in blue, the AMD test bench in red, and then the Office rig is sort of an orange. And then this column is DaVinci Resolve 19 Studio, and the last column is DaVinci Resolve 20. And you can see that the scores that were rendered using the benchmark tool. Now, if it was NA, that means I didn't actually have the card in my possession. And if you notice, I didn't want to just call all 5070s, or if I had multiple 5070 Ti's or multiple 5080s, they just didn't get lumped together as 5080s because there's clock differences, there might be memory speed differences, whatever the overclock is, primarily to the die and the processor speed. I didn't want to discount that, so I left them separate as it relates to being specific with what card I tested. And if there are situations here that I didn't get a chance to do 19 and 20 in head-to-head, and when it comes time to do head-to-head comparisons, I just took that card out. So in this table, you see the score for what the score was for that card for that version of DaVinci Resolve. And as we start doing head-to-head comparisons, if I didn't have it, I didn't make it up and it's not in there. Okay. I don't own all of these cards. I'm a single owner, business owner here. I can't carry around this product. This is a lot. So then if we're going to actually look at the comparison between 19 and 20, you can see how I scaled this down. And I had to scale it down because these were the cards I had that I could do my direct comparison between DaVinci Resolve 19 and 20. Now, 20 beta I did primarily with the Office rig because I tested 20 beta on the Office rig and left my test benches at 19 Studio or 20 Studio, where I had the Puget bench available to me because it didn't do me any good if I could run the software and yet not run a benchmark. So I was very regimented with my test benches, but I played around with the beta software on my main rig. So between 19 and 20, did we get the performance optimization that we were promised? If you remember, the 50-series cards weren't optimized for DaVinci Resolve 19. And I was even told every time you plug a different card in, it wants to do the rendering and the optimization of the neural engines and optimize it for the software. And you'll go through it. Sometimes it takes up to 30 minutes for some of the cards I had. And they said, don't bother, skip it. It doesn't do anything. It's not optimized for these cards. So it doesn't help you to run through that piece of it. So I just skipped it every time, because then if in my previous reporting out, you'll see that I just reported like the sort of the muscle of the card. I mean, it may not be optimized for it, but this is what we had. Right now, we've got DaVinci Resolve 20 Studio, and it's supposed to be optimized for the 50 series cards. And for the most part, all these cards plugged right in. They didn't argue with me. If I was manually selecting them and said, hey, you've changed cards, go in and re-update your configuration, and I did a couple clicks, and restart the software, and hey, the world's a wonderful place, right? And one thing that you'll notice, and I left some 3080 and 3090 data in here, is that it wasn't always positive. So we lost some productivity moving from the 3080 from 19 to 20 in both the AMD and the Intel test bench. That tells me that there truly was a drop in performance there. I don't really know why. Um, on the Intel bench, we had basically a wash for the 3090, but saw somewhat of a performance increase moving to the AMD test bench. I can't make heads or tails out of why that happened, but let's just look at the 50 series cards only, and we did see a performance increase from most of the cards, right? And it was roughly a 4.5% improvement when you go from DaVinci Resolve 19 Studio to 20 Studio with your 50 series card overall. And if you've got one of these in particular, look and see where your particular increase in performance may be. Now, I have to do this. Um, that I built a lot of Intel benches, and I believe, I didn't have the data to prove it then, that Intel was still the better platform over AMD. And I believe so much in the 14th gen platform, I don't even own a Core i9 newest Intel CPU. I have all 14th gen systems in my personal builds and other builds as part of this business, and you've seen a lot of them on my channel. I've got one AMD build, you're witnessing it, and I needed to put it together just to sort of have a head-to-head. Now, I think a 14th gen i9 14900KF versus a AMD 9900X is a pretty fair comparison. Now, you can spew the hate comments down below and say, no, that wasn't good enough, but it's a current Ryzen 9900X with a 2 generation previous 14th gen Intel CPU. I'm happy with it. If you look at the scores, Intel looks like it comes out on top. So when you're looking at DaVinci Resolve 19, you have an increase of about 9.8% favoring Intel. And when you go to DaVinci Resolve 20, you also have a favoring Intel percentage of about 8.8%. So 8 to 10% increase of running in productivity if you stick with the Intel platform. Overall, this favors the Intel platform by over 9%. Now, you can say that that's really not that big a deal, and I might agree with you. But there's a lot of hate out there. And if you're going to build a gaming rig, you build an AMD rig. I mean, I can admit it. Let's just admit that for productivity, Intel is the top dog here. And I'm not the only content creator that's actually saying these things. And suffice it to say, if you're trying to build the fastest PC in terms of benchmarking for the glory list, right? Your 3D marks, and what are the fastest systems out there? If you're running liquid nitrogen or keeping it cool and seeing how fast you can push a system, 14th gen Intel, top of the list. So you take that for what it's worth. But um, honestly, I'm happy with the Intel platform, but overall, the AMD platform is no slouch, and you can have a great performance with an Intel platform, especially if you're trying to do a hybrid build where you're wanting to game on it. And again, I don't have any problem playing some games on my i9 14900KS in my main rig, and my sim rigs, KS. There's no issues with the Intel. There's obviously no issues playing games on the AMD platform. But suffice it to say that if you're building a productivity platform and you're trying to choose the most efficient and quickest platform, it's Intel. Okay, so moving on from the Puget Bench benchmark files to the actual rendering times. Okay, so you've got quick export render times, and this table is very big, and I'm going to leave it here for a minute so you can pause and zoom in because I realize it's a lot, and I know I have a lot of people that watch my videos on cell phones. So hats off to you. Thank you for tuning in. Um, I will. I'm trying to be cognizant of how much data I'm putting on the screen, but unfortunately, I don't know how to trim this down anymore. So you got to bear with me here. Um, I've got 29 different tests looking at DaVinci Resolve and Puget Bench version numbers, what system we ran, and I trimmed it down into the basic GPU name. Is it a 5090, 5080, 5070 Ti, 5070, onward? And then this column is the specific GPU that was used, the version of DaVinci Resolve, and how long it took me to export that 21-ish minute, 22-minute 4K file that is one of my videos up on my YouTube channel. The same file every time, the same codec, the same container, no difference except you plug a GPU in a particular bench or system and run it. Here's my render times, and then the differences down the list in seconds from the fastest, which you could render it in 2 minutes and 32 seconds with the Office rig and the 5090. And then you can see, and I tried to color code it so you can see how they get grouped together, the 5070 Ti's, 5080s, and as they sort of lump up a little bit. And let's make this a little easier to read and understand. So let's just look at DaVinci Resolve 20, because right now, if you're buying a 50 series card, you're not going to try to use DaVinci Resolve 19. You want to move to 20 and get the best rendering times you possibly can. What can you expect from these three systems with these cards in DaVinci Resolve 20 and what your render times were? Again, can't say again, the 5080 up here, I think it was running out of its shoes here. I'm not sure how that guy ended up at the top of the list. That's really out of character for this card, so I don't know if it's an error or not, but I've already given this card back, so I can't rerun this one. So instead of fudging it and not taking it out, I'm leaving it there. But suffice it to say that that looks like an outlier, and take that for what you will. But let's make it a little easier to understand, because I think once you see where they're grouped together, because it looks to me like the 5090s are up here, and see how your 5070s and 5080s are lumped right there together. There's really not much of a difference in time. Now, this doesn't come as a shock if you've watched my last, the part 2, where I didn't have the 5090 and it was all 5080, 5070 Ti, 5070, and how closely tight bunched they were. The 5070 shocked me because it turned out to be a better card than I dreamed, and the 5070 Ti sometimes beat the 5080. So everything was so tightly packed, but we do see some separation with the 5090. So really the 5090 hits the first 30 seconds in the top spots. And after that time frame, for the next 30 to 45 seconds, you get the group of 5080, 5070 Ti, and 5070. And consistently, your 5070 is 45-ish seconds down, but 30 seconds, the 5080, 5070 Ti, they're right there. And this is just reinforced by the data that I've shown in my previous videos, that they are really tight there together. There is more performance with the 5080 on average. So if you're looking for to eke out closer and closer to the top of the chart, you're going to go to a 5080 or the 5070 Ti. But if you're trying to save money, you really can't go wrong with the 5070 Ti. And I never thought I'd say that. That's not the card I set out to own myself, right? And I was overall happy with the 30 series cards, because I was rendering as I started with the 3080 and then put a water block on the 3090 and put the 3090 in. And then when I went to 4K, I started to notice the blips and the stutters and the dragging around and that started to irritate me. And I thought, well, maybe I can't hold on to my 3090 and let the 50 series just go on by and wait for the next one. Maybe I need to look into it. And that sort of snowballed into all of this as we have it today. So, after having these particular render times, um, sorry, I can't go back to the 30 series now. Now, don't get me wrong; they're still great cards. If you have one, I mean, you wait less than 4 minutes and 30 seconds to render a 22-minute 4K file. That's not bad. It's that's very reasonable. But once you own a different card, and you probably want to stick with your more productive cards, right? And so um, the 30 series will be either sold or relegated to historical testing in the future. So, what did we learn today? We learned that there was optimization when you move from DaVinci Resolve 19 to 20. We did get optimized for the 50 series, which is great to see. When you compare Intel versus AMD CPUs, you do see that Intel is faster. It is a more productive platform when you're video editing. Gosh, talking take two, right? Like, am I nervous about all the hate comments I'm gonna get because I say Intel's the better platform? Anyway, when you're comparing it to enthusiast CPUs, now I've not had a server Intel chip, and I'd love to test one of those platforms. I've never worked with a Threadripper. Maybe one of these days I'll have the opportunity to work with those platforms. That would be great. I would love that opportunity. But when you're looking at a mid to high tier NVIDIA 50 series card, and that's what I'm saying, 5070 is a mid tier card. I'm not that interested in 5060 Ti's and the 5050. I don't know. You know, I wouldn't recommend those. But then again, I wasn't excited about the 5070, and it turned out to surprise me. So maybe I'll hold those comments, and that if I have an opportunity to get some of those cards sent to me, that I would test them and give them an honest review and an honest chance at a reasonable render time. But I think your mid to high 50 series cards have good render performance, and even the 5070 has good performance, and it's a possible budget build to get a similar result. Maybe that's also some foreshadowing than maybe my next project. But be that as it may, the RTX 5090, you see a chasm of performance difference from the 5070 Ti to 5080 to the 5090, and that it's a huge jump. You saw it in the synthetic benchmark, and then you see it again in the rendering times. Is that there's a significant difference there, and then as you get down into the 5080, 5070 Ti, 5070, the difference becomes much smaller. So that you really see the difference if you don't have the 5090. But do you need the 5090 for what we're doing here? As an enthusiast uploading to YouTube, am I really going to see the benefit or need that 5090? And you say need, right? It's a want. I mean, so which at this point would you choose? Now, I don't think we're ready to make a decision yet. And I don't want us to jump the gun because there is a lot of data to get to. The number of hours I put into this, I really hope that you also see some benefit in this information. I need to break this up into chunks. It's too much. Because still a lot on the horizon. There's render times for different file types, codecs, containers. I did on average of anywhere from 2 to 4 different renders on each of the 4K files for different codecs, containers, just to see if there was a difference. The overclock cards, do they make a difference? Now that we have some optimization in DaVinci Resolve, do we start to see a separation now? Is it worth buying an overclock card if you have an option to? And the resources of the system, do they matter more than the GPU? Because the way we've set this up is I've tried to make it just GPU differences, but You did see a performance increase from the office rig that I didn't focus on today, but you saw that there was higher benchmark numbers and lower render times almost consistently. So does that mean that there are other factors at play? And yes, there are. But what's more important? Like, you really need a good GPU. Yes, you do. But what what situations do you want to favor your CPU, your memory speed? And we'll get into that hopefully. VRAM utilization and the amount you need, does that matter? I know that's been a very hot topic in terms of gameplay, of not using 8 GB cards when you're trying to play and enjoy AAA games today. But does that matter in terms of rendering? Can you still have a decent performance if you've got an 8 GB card? I don't know. I don't have an 8 GB card, but what we can do is looking at more of a budget build, and we'll talk about that. And then we can look at VRAM utilization because I have that data as well. Now, I also have temperature comparison data because I have a couple 5070 Ti's. And then I also have another one from PNY, if you've noticed, that was the air cooler. I didn't take that one apart. So now we have a comparison for an air cooled and a water cooled in terms of rendering times. And then power usage for rendering times and benchmarks. How much wattage do each of these cars use? Does it matter to you? Or is there really a big difference? Studio versus game drivers. Are there driver version differences? I mean, the NVIDIA drivers have been kind of atrocious, and there's been a lot of people reporting issues with issues with their systems and versions of the drivers. Should you use this one? Should you use that one? I can weigh into what I've found and another time. And then the most interesting and fun thing that I was doing with this was trying to get 2 video cards to optimize the render performance. 5080s. I tried that once already. You saw that didn't work. Well, I went back and tried again. I mean, I didn't want to give up on it. I really want this to work. So I went back. I tried to learn more about making sure that I set it up right, and then try to learn why it did work or why it doesn't work, so that I can report that back to you of maybe why you could say it works, but it's not optimized, or it doesn't work, or that's coming. That'll be a fun one. So 2 5080s, 2 5070 Ti's. How about mixing GPUs? And we'll talk about that. But you can tell there's a lot more here to come. There's a lot more data on the way. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Hang with me there. Stay safe. God bless.
I'm sure I could come up with something.
Okay.
What are you doing, Dad?